So go to banners now.
Yep.
Super, thank you.
Hello, hello, hello.
Howdy do.
I am very excited. Guys, today we have a special treat. We have David and Hannah with REI, Easy REI Closings. I'm super excited to have you guys here today. This is something that I am extremely passionate about sharing. I teach all of our students what our TC process has traditionally been, but I am nowhere near the level of what Easy REI Closings does over there. So we're going to go over quite a few things, and this is something that we're going to be able to bring you guys value once a month. So we're going to start out today by going over, the basic process, right? What is transaction coordination? Because for me, I feel like there's like a lot of things that are misunderstood about this, right? We're going to talk about why it's so important, and we're going to give some great examples as to, how this can save you deals, TC nightmares we've run into. I'm sure David has way more stories than I do, but thousands of deals in. I've got some doozies, but we're really excited to have this live and give this value to you guys today. So David, do you want to introduce yourself? I'm sure there's gonna be so many people on here that are new to this. So why don't you introduce yourself and tell everybody a little bit about what you guys do?
Sure. So my name is David Olds, and I'm the owner and founder of Easy REI Closings. And we are a very large, the nation's largest virtual transaction coordination company. So what we do, we fill that gap in between the investor and the title company. So oftentimes there's a misconception that a title company is a transaction coordinator, and that's not really the case. And anybody who's done some deals definitely understands that. But we're the people, mostly Hannah and her team. They go out and they'll collect and it can vary on every deal, which is what makes transaction coordinating tough to teach, but gathering all of the documents, like the most basic things, right? Like, let's get your contract. Let's get the seller's information. Let's get their social security number. Let's start to gather up all of that information that we know the title company is going to need to get this deal closed, right? And, one of the tricky things about title and transaction coordination is there are very few things like this where you have an opportunity to learn how that actually works, right? Because most of us investors, and I'm an investor, I've been an investor since 2002, we get into this business and we're excited, right? We want to do marketing. We want to put out signs. We want to send out postcards. We want to do PPC, and we want to start talking to sellers, and that's amazing. So there's a lot of education, obviously, right? Built around being the king closer and doing all of that. And then there's education, a little bit of education around the dispo side. That's getting more and more prevalent lately, which is fantastic. But there's almost nothing on that back third of the business, which is how to do transactions. And I think the reason, Cassie, is it's more than just, I'm going to give you this checklist of information to get, right? It's more than just collecting these, go get these 5 documents, and that's the job. Because, what we do as investors, first off, our job as investors is to make a situation better, right? But, we go out and we search for people with problems, because the more problems they have, those are problems that we as investors can solve, and then we can get a better price on that property. Fantastic, right? That's what we want to do. But conversely, out of the other side of our mouth, what we say when we go to dispo a property, right, is we're going to guarantee you clear title and proration of taxes. So on the front side, we're looking for people with death, divorce, taxes, bankruptcy, foreclosure, bad tenants, all the crazy things. And what I tell people is, just imagine this big ball of spaghetti, right? All of those problems are all mixed in together, and somebody needs to unwind all of them, because in order to get to closing and give your buyer that clear title, all of those issues have to be solved, right? And sometimes it's liens, sometimes it's bankruptcy or foreclosure or multiple heirs, right? It can be so very different. Hannah could tell us all the different stories about that. But I'm here today with Hannah. She is our customer service manager, our client happiness manager.
Kind of a catch-all right now.
Catch-all, yeah. So she's the first person that when somebody becomes a client of ours, that she works with to get them onboarded and all of that. But before that, she was our number one team lead and probably the most experienced title person that I've ever met. So I definitely wanted to bring her on here because I knew you were going to have the hard questions, and I'm just the pretty face.
Well, I love that, and I'm
You are
really
the pretty face, dude. Like, give me something, all right? Can't be smart and pretty.
I'm really excited to have you both on here. I think that's, it brings a lot of value, and it's, kind of digging into it, there is so much more. And this is, when historically I've taught people, as somebody that educates in this space, like, they want me, they want to do, like you said, what I call all the sexy stuff, the marketing, the closing, the, acquisitions. And yes, we are getting heavier on teaching dispositions. And it's like, all of that stuff is great. And it's absolutely vital to your business, but people historically tend to completely forget about the transaction coordination and what I call closing coordination. So I'm going to talk about a little bit of that, but people typically like to think of, like you said, I love how you said that people think title means transaction coordination, or they tend to think transaction coordination is basically pushing paper, right? And it's so very different. And as much as I can sit here and have a great operating system, and tell people like, hey, yeah, after you get a contract assigned or after you sign a contract, you should have something that reminds you to check on if the earnest money has been deposited and get it receipted, right? That's great. And like, literally teaching things like that do change people's businesses in this industry, right? Like, I've seen some actually, to me, baffling how people are, doing volume and doing business without even having those things in place, right? They're just kind of like, to me, it's like you get 2/3 of the way there and then you're just winging it, like come what may. In the end, if you don't have like a really good process in place and somebody who is highly trained to do transaction coordination, and then the closing coordination is all the stuff that you probably group in, and like a lot of people who know, they group it in with transaction coordination. I've historically kind of separated it, but with a company like yours, I mean, you're so much more than a transaction coordinator to me, right? So it gets into all of those things where, I do want to dive into like, what is it, hey, you have this process, right? And so if you're helping people with contracts and you're helping people, with the process part of it, right? You're helping make sure that people are, checking off all of those boxes, right? Like the lender's in with title, there's communication, earnest money is receipted, closing is on track, closing is on schedule. But it's the communications parts too, right? Staying in communication through the transaction coordination process is a make or break deal.
Oh, 100%. And I think that's where, so many deals get lost, right? You have a couple problems. One, you don't understand what to do when there's a lost death certificate or a missing trust document or whatever mayhem pops up in the title search and in the process. And then because of that, your deal doesn't close, right? This happened to me so many times. And when I was first starting out as an investor, I would go down to the title company. I'd be so happy. I'd give them my contract and they'd be like, oh, David, this one, you're going to have to do probate. I'm like, oh, you're kidding me. Throw my $10,000 deal away. And then next time it was a bankruptcy or next, it was all these problems that the title company didn't want to solve or go out of their way. Why? Because I was one guy bringing them 3 contracts a month and they just really didn't care. And it was going to be extra work for them. And finally, Cassie, one time I was down there with this attorney. We called him, his name was Jeremy, but we called him Dr. No because everything was no, right? You can't do this. I'm like, dude, come on. I promised this woman we'd get this deal solved. And he's like, well, I guess, if you can get an obituary and a death certificate and all the heirs to sign off and, 2 affidavits of heirship, I can close this. I'm
Right.
like, what? What about all these deals I threw away where you gave me some BS exam or excuse? So there was a way, right? There is a chance that you can get these deals closed if you understand, some of the ways to kind of navigate all of that, for sure.
Well, yeah, I mean, but even when you have like a clear, easy, ready title,
Yeah,
right? Like I've seen people lose deals just because of communications
sure.
between
Yeah.
sellers and title company and
Yeah.
your company and buyers, and all of those parties making sure that they're on the same page, right?
Yeah.
And so like if you're missing that piece in and of itself, like let's even like take away the horror stories or the lost death certificates or and I'm gonna have you dive in a little bit to like the quit claim life
Sure.
here in a little bit,
Yeah.
because that's what it is for me. And like you're right, like for us as a nationwide company, like
Sure.
we have done deals all over the country.
Mhm.
I have so many different stories, right? Like we had a super easy closing,
Yeah.
right? But because we were selling a property that we owned in Alaska, and I hired an agent, highly successful, highly knowledgeable, but basically he had his assistant doing a lot of this stuff.
Right.
And title was communicating to her.
Yeah.
And title was not communicating to us as the sellers. And, there was an issue with their funding, with buyer's funding. So it got delayed. Well, they didn't order updated payoffs. They ended up paying like $4,000 extra
Yeah.
to pay off the mortgage, which took us 5 months to recover that money.
Yeah.
And, that all could have been avoided if title would have just responded to, well, title did respond to me when I asked them. They said they had an updated payoff, but lo and behold, documents got signed, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, even as somebody super experienced, even as somebody who's done thousands of real estate transactions, these little, nuances in communication and the transaction coordination and closing coordination process are so vital to having the best transaction possible, right?
Yeah. There's a lot of, there's a lot of points there to touch on, but there's a lot of things to juggle, right? There's a lot of bits and pieces. And if you're a solo person like I was for a long time who refused to get help because I'm a man and I was so smart and I'm an entrepreneur and I could do everything and nobody could do anything better than me because I'm that guy, right? Like every probably dude who's watching this. Like I did that for 5 or 6 years. And, ultimately I realized there's a cap on what I can possibly do. Right. So that's because there's just only so many hours in the day. But, when you talk about communication with sellers, we all talk about this like it's just the thing that we do. It's like breathing. But, there's a reason that realtors exist, right? It's to hold somebody's hand. Typically the people that we're buying these properties from, they're under some kind of stress or duress or just there's something weird. Also, normal people don't sell houses 3 a week like you guys are doing, right? Like it's not normal. So, somebody has to have that touch point with them every single week. And I remember when I was by myself, like, how do I do that? And the marketing and the acquisitions and the dispositions and it's just, it's so challenging to do all of those things.
You bring up like the best point, and like this is what I tell everybody that listens to me. When you get to a certain point, just because you can doesn't mean you should, right?
Right.
Just because I can do transaction coordination, and I'm telling y'all, I'm the best person I know at it that's not named Easy REI Closes, right?
I own the company. I'm not great at it. I hire the best people.
But you think about like, the whole company.
Yeah.
But like realistically speaking, I'm not like it is not my main focus.
Yeah.
And frankly, while I have solved some real doozies that so many title
Sure.
companies have said to us in the past, like, no, we can't do that. I'm like, that is not logical.
Yeah.
That I had to go through so much
Yeah.
to get to that point. And I can't even solve all the stuff you guys can. Like, I'm like, right? So for me, it's like, just because I can doesn't mean I always should. It
No.
may not be the best use. And part of it is like, and I'm not just talking from like our viewpoint, but I want people to understand like the example,
Yeah.
right?
Venus deal, like how many emails are you sending just to coordinate the transaction? What would you do if you didn't have to send 82 emails on one transaction?
Yeah.
Right. Well, and it's not even that. It's just like, it frees you up time to go get more deals.
Right. Yeah. So we talk about lost opportunity of deals that you may lose because you don't understand how to get it closed. Well, that's cool. The deal that you're spending 200 emails on in New York, right? How many deals did you miss?
Exactly.
What lead did you not call back because you're like, oh my God, this is a $50,000 deal. I've got to get this thing closed, right? So lost opportunity hits you on both sides.
Yeah, and the opportunity cost of what you could be doing. Actually, RJ, it's so funny. Like, I always use this example of, I am one of those people. My father raised me to be able to do things for myself,
Sure.
And so I'm one of those people who I'm like, oh, and my mother tells me, even as a baby toddler, she says, my favorite phrase that I could speak when I could speak a phrase was, I'll do it myself, mommy.
Yeah.
I'll do it myself, right?
Yeah.
And so it's not just men.
Well,
it's not just men. It's
an
me.
affliction.
RJ's better at it than I am.
Yeah. Entrepreneurs. So listen, like we all have something broken in our brain that makes us, gives us the ability to be entrepreneurs, right? We can be very focused. We can do, all of those things. However, the downside of that is, like we're really great at starting things and being visionaries and thinking great things up, terrible at paperwork, like not the thing we're good at. You can't be good at everything as much as we'd like to all think we are.
It's so crazy because like I have a system and I have a process set up so that we are really good at it. But I mean, I can't do that for myself. We have an in-house transaction coordinator, and it's like there's still value there in the opportunity cost. And I say this because if I can take my entire team and have them focused on more transactions, even if you're a solopreneur, if you have a whole team, it is so entirely because RTC is cross-trained, right? And he is really vital. Like he is on top of all of that system, all of that process, etc. But a lot of people have this misconception where it's like, if I could find the right admin, well, what do you have to train them in? There's so many different layers of opportunity cost. Trying to train somebody in like what Hannah, like you keep pointing at Hannah, like to know what she knows. How many years does it take you to gain that knowledge? It took me forever and ever, amen, just running into the same issue multiple times. And like, oh, this is how we solved it here. This is how we solved it here. This is, having those references. It's so insane. Where it's like, why are you going to put yourself through that, right? So I think of it this way as well. Having somebody like y'all and being able to just touch base on those issues or how you're clearing title or how you're coordinating that closing is essential. Like, because even if you aren't in a position like me and you don't know all those things that you don't know, who better to learn them from?
Right.
And I think one of the benefits to that as well is like when you work with a company like ours, we're closing 28 deals a day. A regular investor might close 28 in a year. I mean, I hope more than that. That's always the goal, right? But the experience for me, it even doesn't even have to do with years. I'll close 500, 600, 700 deals by myself in a year. Most real estate agents don't even do that in a lifetime. So the experience that you just get to build off of in working with a coordinator that's doing it all day, every day in every state for every different type of investor is like, you can't just teach that.
No, you can't. You can't. Like I can't. Like, you know what I mean?
And most people, again, this is not a knock on anybody. Nobody comes into this business, very few people understanding the nuances of title. So if you don't understand it, how are you going to train somebody? And I'm not against hiring in-house, right? If you want to do that, that's okay. For us, we can do it better and cheaper, but if you're that person that wants the control, that's cool. But yeah, like if you don't know, how are you going to teach somebody? So now you have to pay for that expertise.
Yep.
And again, great, you can go pay 60, 70, 80. We've seen people offering $100,000 for transaction coordinators, but are you bringing in somebody that understands our world, right? Investor world. We're a whole different animal than just somebody who's rolled out of a title company,
Right.
with novations and sub two assignments and wraps and land contract. I mean, there's just the variables never end. It's just a different business.
And it blows my mind how many people don't talk about that, right? And I think like what you guys have is truly a gold mine, because I've seen people try to be the company that you are, and I'm going to tell you, the experience is not good.
Well, I mean, yeah.
I have tested multiple different people, so I want to talk about like that for a second, like just because I really, for my own personal reasons, but what is that difference with you guys? Because I know your team is huge. They are in-house. They are a company. It's not people working virtually. So talk about how it is, like your team is set up and your process, like working with you guys.
So there are definitely other transaction coordinators around, of course. There's some smaller regional people. Yes. Okay. So there's that. And some of them do a great job. Some of them have kind of small boutique operations, and it's fantastic. So, but we're a little different. Actually, I didn't know anybody existed. I thought when I thought this idea up, I was the smartest person ever, right? But so what makes us different is we were very intentional from day one when we built our company, right? So being a 20-year investor, I understood all of the struggles that we go through as investors, right? And, I'm that guy. I'm the banana head wholesaler who's not good at paperwork, right? So I definitely understood the things that I needed. There's an old commercial, the Hair Club for Men. I use this example a lot, where the guy comes on at the end and he says, "Hey, not only am I the owner, but I'm also a client." So that was the way that we built the company, was to be like, it was for me and for my friends, right? Corey Geary and Nick Perry and, guys like that who, needed a source for coordinators. So again, very intentional about how we built it. It wasn't a part-time gig for us where, we were just going to start taking on some people and, outsourcing the VA to VAs or something. So we knew that we needed to be in all 50 states because virtual wholesaling is a real thing. Obviously, you guys are like the poster children for that. We knew that we needed to be able to handle all types of transactions, because real investors do multiple types of transactions, right? At least one or two, right? At least wholesale and novation, sub two, right? So, because again, 20 years of being an investor, I understood that. I understood the frustrations of working with title companies. Oh my goodness. Like I could write books on bad deals and, title companies didn't give a shit when I hopefully we could swear, right? That I would upload my contract or send it over to them. And the level of apathy was fucking mind blowing, right? So they just didn't care. And again, I get it. Investor business is the worst business. We have the squirreliest files. Even, when I was the biggest guy in Chattanooga and was doing 8-10 deals a month, still like that's, I'm not the biggest realtor, right? So I don't garner that kind of attention. So we were very intentional about setting up a company and a system that was going to be client first, right? Because I was the client and I'm a dick, right? So I wanted to make sure it was there to serve me. So I think that might be what makes us a little bit different. We are incredibly customer focused, and, we also understand personality types, right? Like as investors and entrepreneurs, we're let's jump out of the plane and build the parachute on the way down. We'll just figure it out, right? Yeah. The things that make us awesome at running those businesses, well, the opposite is the things that we're terrible at, which is paperwork.
Yeah. I'm going to research how to build a parachute for 7 years before I even build it. And then I'm going to contemplate and consult with multiple people about whether or not I'm actually going to jump out of the plane.
So we know that when the people that we hire are the opposite personality type. They love spreadsheets. They love following up. They love solving problems. They, they're the, the yin and the yang to the investor. So I think that, that's part of the success. And then just having amazing people, right? People that really love this. And, for 3 years, we've just built a team and cultivated it. They all believe in where we're going. And everybody is very focused on the clients who are being wholesalers.
The difference in the personality types as well, I think plays really well into like another main focus, which is like, even though we're in the business of transactions, we are in the business of building relationships, because outside relationships also flourish.
Mhm.
Our clients' relationships flourish when we have relationships with title companies and when they communicate well with their coordinator. And so recognizing those kind of takes the edge off of that relinquishing trust. Okay, here, I'm giving you all my files. I'm giving you all the money that I'm going to make this year. Please don't mess up, right? So that relationship is something that I think we've really strived to focus on a lot in the last year, especially to refine how that moves forward.
Well, and I love both of your answers, but I really just want to add like a really huge layer from that customer standpoint. I think there's, a lot to be said about the fact that you guys, and I'm not dissing any other TC or TC companies in specific, but I've never had the experience where the TC was anybody except for, in essence, a relayer of information.
Yeah.
A relayer of paperwork. And I think that is such a standout difference, is how knowledgeable you guys are on that process. And I know you said that to a degree, David, but you're right. And I like in that, if my entire active portal is in your hands, a third of solving that problem for the seller, for my company, for everybody that works for me, the food they have to put on the table, it is so important to us. And for me, for many, many, many years, it was the thing in my head as your client avatar is, why would I put that in anyone else's hands?
Sure, I get it.
So it was more than just being stubborn. So I think that's like such a vital importance to who you are as a company. And that, like, when I'm sitting here saying you can do a better job, that's why people should put their files in your hands.
I'm going to tell you, we take that responsibility incredibly serious. One, because I'm the client, right? I say this to our coordinators all the time. Like, I'm the idiot. Like, I'm the goofball. Like, I'm the guy that can't, my desk is a disaster, right? So I understand the need to be able to trust somebody. And we can talk about that. I walk around, that's the example I use all the time with our TCs is, listen, little Bobby, this may be his only deal in Phoenix this month. It's $10,000. It has to fucking close. He's got a wife, a kid, a VA, whatever. That thing has to close. Like, we are. So when we go back and we talked about apathy a little bit later with title companies, one of the things that we were very intentional about also was making sure that I wanted our coordinators to care as much as you care, because it's your deal. So again, we looked at it and we said, well, how do we solve that? And we said, okay, we're going to pay them on a blended pay scale. So they got salary, plus they get a commission. So the minute your deal closes, now they've earned a commission. So what does that do? Now they're invested in your deal as much as you are. Are they making $20,000? Of course not. But they're making a nice spiff on every single deal. And these guys and gals are closing a lot of deals. Their commission checks are pretty good because I write the checks. But the reason that we do that, we're willing to give up some of our profit to reward them, is because I want to make sure they're constantly pushing your deal over the line, right? So not only do you get that, but we did $165 million in closings, right? Like, First American shows up at our office, right? Like, Fidelity National shows up at our office. When you do 2,500 files in a year, that's a big deal, right? Like, when God forbid it ever gets to me, but if it gets to me and I pick up the phone and call the VP of, the regional VP for First American, they're going to answer, right? Because we handle a lot of transactions. So you get the benefit of that leverage as well.
No, and I think and I don't want to I don't want to spend all day talking on this one point,
Sure.
but
I know.
I think that it's just it is the difference maker. You don't have a VA who doesn't know what an affidavit of heirship is,
Yeah,
calling
VAs
or
are a terrible
communicating
idea.
on the file. You know what I mean? And I've seen so many companies do that where it's like they make you all these promises. I'm like, I just wanted to highlight that because for me, like, even though, we can sit here and we can break down what that transaction coordination process looks like. Well,
Sure.
yeah, we can talk about the documents that are needed, the
Yeah.
amendments, the complicated paperwork. Somebody asked me the other day, like, hey, can you send me as a student, what subject to paperwork you use? I'm like, well, which one?
Yeah,
I have 4 different sets for
sure.
sub 2. You know what I mean? And it's like, it's so much more than the paperwork. It's, yes, the paperwork and, y'all having eyes on it and making sure everything is in place.
Yeah.
It's so much more than the communication. It's the knowledge. And it's the knowledge for me that is that trust that builds those relationships, that puts you guys, 1,000 steps above where anybody else could be.
Yeah.
And that's the genius in it. And it's like you said, like the way you even structured your team, it mirrors how your clients structure their teams,
Yeah.
so that you're parallel with us and
Yeah.
not perpendicular to what
No,
we're trying to achieve.
we're here to support, our clients, and we're an extension of the team. I mean, are there limitations? Of course, right? Like we're not going to jump in your every Monday morning meeting, but to compensate, we will give you more communication than I've showed you, right? It's impressive.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
not me, Hannah, them. Like they're
Yeah.
because we hire people that are really great at that
I
type
was
of stuff.
literally thinking about last year, and I was like, I wonder how many books I've written, just like on
Yeah.
accident.
Today, how many books have you written today?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, trust me, that's me.
Yeah. So I mean, we're just incredibly, customer service oriented, and we want to make sure that, we want your business to grow because I want you to do more transactions, and then we'll all make more money together.
Okay, so I love this, but I want to kind of dig into, the more of the nuances of transaction coordination. So, like, for example, there's the basic things, there's the checklist, right? Sure. And then for me, in my brain, what I always set up was, a template email for all these different situations, and a buyer's information sheet, a seller's information sheet, and making sure the right people are CC'd, and you have this email and then this email thread and this email thread, and if there's minimally 3 email threads going through, right? I don't want to necessarily bore people to tears on that stuff, but in essence, and I will never forget it, the first time I sat down with you and Heather at an event, and I was like, let me peek in your back system, and you're like, oh no, we have all this and that. I'm like, but no, I want to see it, right? Like, I want to see it because I want to be able to log in and see where my transaction is. I don't want to, whatever, right? And like, that was such a big deal to me.
It was a big deal to me. Yeah.
Because I in my brain, it's like, with a transaction coordinator, and I really want to highlight this because there's another kind of misnomer, in my opinion. Yeah. Is like, people think when they hire you guys, they get to dip out, right? Mm-hmm. And like, you're going to do all the seller communication, you're going to do all the buyer communication, right? And I think it's so important that you be coordinated with your transaction coordinator. Oh. You know what I mean? So I think that those points are super vital. Yeah. You don't get to dip out just because they hired you, even though you guys might make that feel like basically that's what they get to do compared to.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, we want you to dip 90% of the way out, right?
I know.
Because honestly, what happens is then you start to get too many cooks in the kitchen, right? If we're emailing title and then for some reason you're emailing and then that email goes to you instead of us, then it's just, you're balancing all these plates and they all sort to fall. But no, we definitely want you to be involved. We want you to be checking your portal. We're sending out continuous, communications and weekly updates and all of that type of stuff. But no, of course, you have to be, there are some problems that we can't solve, right? Hey, your seller's not responding, or hey, we just did hear from your seller and they're aggravated with you and they're going to close with somebody else. we need to get you on the phone so you can call and save this deal, right? Because
Right.
we're your advocate, right?
Yep.
And it's an interesting thing. You talk about stories that sellers, because we're this third party, they tell us everything. Like we
Yep.
get all the tea, right? So
Well,
if
and you
they're-
guys are a layer of protection too, a
Right.
layer of separation, so that
Right.
it actually gives that power in that, like, oh no, they are really on top of this, so
Mhm.
that nothing falls through the cracks. It's worth, like
I'm a
it,
great
it's
source.
yeah, but it also, like, when that seller wants to come back, I call it mom versus dad. Like, you
Yeah.
asked mom and she said no, and then so you go to dad.
Mhm.
Like, it's that portal. It's that knowing that communication was there, and like
Yeah.
being coordinated on that. Like, yeah, you get to outsource it. You get the expert. You get to dip out and to a degree.
Sure.
But like for me, it's always like I would never be able to, as a person on our sales floor or as a solopreneur or a small team.
Yeah.
Well, we are a small team, but anybody that's in that, like, I want to be able to dip in, like, be a part of the process that, like, hey, I'm staying updated on where my closings are, and then sellers and buyers are naturally going to try to talk to the people that acquired the property or disposing the property, So I just think that part is really important. So what I do want to get into is, like, I do want to hear, like, and this might be really interesting coming from Hannah. What is, like, if you can think of, like, the biggest nightmare story, like the nightmare solve
Like this week's or last week's or the week before.
of all time.
Again, we bring in like 30 to 50 files a day. So
There's not a lot we haven't seen at this point. And if you are like, here's a new one, I'm going to be like, yes, something new. Let's learn something new. Man, okay. I think I got kind of a good one. Again, this kind of plays into what you were talking about with, like, that added layer of protection. So just example, seller's name, Will Smith. Sorry. Can I say that?
Yeah, that's
You're gonna be canceled.
Mark Smith. Okay, Mark Smith. His dad's name was also Mark Smith. Our client gives us this deal. They're like, hey, Mark Smith, he's showing up on title. He's the owner. I've got his ID. Like, I know it's him. I'm like, cool. I get the seller on the phone, talking, running through seller checklists. Is there an HOA? Did you inherit the property? Yeah, I inherited the property from my parents. I was like, okay, great. I'm going to need those death certificates. Do you have any siblings? No, I don't have any siblings. I get online and I research the obituary. This guy's got 8 siblings. So I call him back and I'm like, hey, Mr. Smith,
bro,
what's going on with your siblings that you said you didn't have? And he's like, I don't have siblings. It's like, well, this obituary that's online says that you do. And he goes, oh, they're all dead. And I was like, well,
all 8.
All 8 of them. I said, I'm going to need death certificates for all of them. He said, they're Mormon. They don't have death certificates. I was like, it's federal crime, first of all. Second of all, do you want to, like, maybe call me back tomorrow when you can, like, rethink your story and, like, give me some honest answers? Because here's the deal, man. You're either going to get paid or you're not. And I'd rather find out the answer to the yes or no.
And this
now
was a self-purchase.
This
right?
was our client was the buyer. Yeah.
So it wasn't a wholesale deal, right?
It wasn't even a wholesale
So our
deal.
client was literally going to buy this. And if the title company did a shit job and gave him title insurance and he puts 200,000 into it, he's going to get stuck. Right. So again, we're your advocate. We're going to make sure that this is closing. You're going to have clear title. Go ahead. Sorry.
It's okay. I'm almost done. He finally calls me back a couple days later. He says, okay, I lied. They're alive. One of them's dead, but the rest of them are alive. But they live in Europe, so I can't get anything for you. And I'm like, okay, like, this is 2023. Like, we can get through this. Like, it's not that hard. Finally, I, like, just people finder the people on the obituary and called them and found out that there was a family dispute and they all technically had a right to the property and none of them wanted to sell except for this one guy. Okay, title can't be clear because nobody else wants to sell. Thankfully, we were able to find that out within, I think, the first it took a little bit longer than a week, just because he kept telling me story after story after story. But quick enough that we were able to let our client know, like, look, man, like you do probably need to drop this deal because these people aren't going to work. So they were, the seller was willing to offer up information to us because we weren't their buyer, that they weren't to our client, and they were able to tell quickly before we really got too far with title, whether or not they wanted to proceed.
And I'll tell you, I'm the only heir is like the most common thing. Like people trying to screw their brothers and sisters out of stuff, thinking that they can get away with selling the property and keeping all the money. Like that's not even uncommon. Like that's a lot.
No, that was,
that
one was just
that is like the most common thing. I think, like, I would say the most common issues, and I would love to hear y'all's thoughts on this. Our most common issues is more of I got it on a quick claim deed, or I bought it at a tax sale and they didn't do it right, and they think that it's past the redemption rights, and it's not. Like, I didn't even file this. And then the airship thing where it's like, oh no, I can sell this property, and it's like, we have one right now, I think that it adopted 2 adopted sons.
Yeah, we've done adopted.
One, fully DNA, biological. That's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah.
One biological child, and like they're not talking. And the 2 adopted sons lived in the house with the dad for forever before the dad passed away. And it's like, it's difficult because they're not talking, and I'm like, at some point, like, anyways. I will say I'm trying to think of like crazy ones. I think one of the things that came up during a closing for us that was pretty crazy is our seller had the same name as somebody that was on the terrorist watch list.
Oh yeah,
that was a big one. Where I was like, what? I've only run into that one once.
Yeah, we've done some where like the seller, the husband was here, but the wife was in the Middle East, right? Just vacate, with family or whatever. So we're okay, no problem. Like easy stuff, right? You just got to have them go to the embassy or a consulate, a U.S. consulate. So the title company sends the whatever the power of attorney so that he could sign for both of them because it was in both names. Great, well, no problem. So she goes to the Egyptian embassy. And the consulate's like, oh no, we don't want this. You don't need to use this one from the title company. We have this generic one that says U.S. government, just sign this. Well, the title company gets it back and like, this isn't good enough. So then then she was back in Jordan, and we had to have her go to a different embassy in Jordan and tell her, do not sign anything but this one right here. In fact, print it and bring it with you. Because it's got, obviously a power of attorney is title companies. For anybody who doesn't know, title companies are in the insurance business, just like your health insurance. So they're in loss mitigation. They don't want to get sued. Everything is about risk tolerance with them. So when you have powers of attorney and attorneys in fact and all these different things, the title company wants to know, why isn't this person here? That's the question, right? If we're going to insure this property and go on the hook for $250,000, why isn't this person here? So power of attorney needs to be very specific to the property. Granting this person, I'm granting Hannah the ability on this date to sign in my place to sell this property or to it's got to be very, very specific. So general powers of attorney, they don't love them. Like they just don't. So anyway,
in general, power of attorneys, like, why do you have them? Don't send them to anybody until you know why it exists. Because once you send it, then people start asking questions, and all of a sudden you're in a hole that you probably could have avoided being in the first place.
Yeah.
Right. And so like, it's so interesting because like the little things, it's so funny because people are like, hey, they ask us all of the time, what title companies do you use here, there, and everywhere? And we do talk about like the very first deal we closed, like we're still closing a transaction right now with that escrow officer, with that title company.
Oh, wow.
Because we are like that relationship, like she knew her stuff so well. She knew we didn't. So we were asking a lot of questions. Yeah. And like, we didn't understand, like you said, what title purpose was.
Yeah.
I didn't understand what a chain of title was. I didn't understand what the difference between I didn't know what an abstract was. Attorney state. I didn't know any of those.
Listen, Cassie, I've been in this for 20 years, and I thought I knew about this side of the business. And I think I told you we're opening our own title company. We're licensed in Texas now. We're going to start taking files there. But like the title business is a completely different business. Like I didn't understand it the way I thought I did. It's a completely different animal.
And we had somebody the other day ask us, "Hey, this judgment showed up. Can we just move it to another title company?" And I was like, "Look, with all due respect, it doesn't work that way." And I kind of had to get into like explaining that they're an insurance business, because you think, oh, they just pull the search and they let you know when it's good and you can close around this and that and the other, and it doesn't always work like that.
Sometimes we get some very A-type personality investors, and they're like, "Just make it work." Like I can make it work if you don't want title insurance.
There's always a solution.
Sure.
Just
when a quick claim deed, that thing gone ahead.
Yeah, and listen, and I bought a lot of properties on quick claim deeds, and I bought tax deed sales because you had brought that up. And that's okay if your strategy is buy and hold for a long time, and you have the risk tolerance for it. And the more defective a title is, right? So when we talk about titles, the general warranty deed is the daddy, he's the granddaddy. Quick claim deed's about at the bottom with pocket deeds and tax deeds and all those things, right? So like at the top, a property, apples and apples properties, a property that can get a general warranty deed, meaning has clear title, like you pay the most for that. A property at the bottom that will only qualify for a quick claim deed, even if it's the same house with a general warranty deed, may sell for $100,000. But on a quick claim deed, like, bro, I'll give you 20, and you'll like it because it's like a salvage title on a car. Somebody could come snatch it away from you because you don't know that you have clear title. So it's okay. Just depends on what you're up for, what kind of adventure.
Yeah, and it kills me because like it happens to me where it's like, we had a guy he did a lot of land stuff, and he came to work for us, and he's like, "Well, you just quit claim deed and close file." I'm like, "No. We won't do it. Like, I'm not doing it. I'm not like, can you imagine developing on a piece of land? Like and there's people out there teaching that stuff, right?
Well,
Imagine spending all that money to develop a piece of land.
Well, imagine, here's the thing. Imagine being the wholesaler who told that buyer. So do you not think that when that guy puts $500,000 into that land, he's not coming back for you?
Exactly. And that's what I said. I'm like, I'm not causing like literally, he just didn't understand it. I would explain it to him over and over. I'm like, that's the most insane thing I've ever heard.
Yeah. And in some states, you can't even insure if there's a quick claim deed involved. Like Texas, for example, you don't want to do a quick claim there at all. Like if one was done back in the 70s, you got to go back to all those people's families and fix it, the chain of title.
Yeah.
So and I would never do anything like that.
But, it's not every place. And then the few times, like I have sold tax deed properties when I was wholesaling, but I was very clear in my contract. This property is not insurable. You will not be able to resell this within the next 7 years or 10 years, right? Whatever the situation may be. And I would make sure like, hey, you're going to buy this. It's past its redemption period. It's yours. But unless you're going to do a super quiet title, you're not going to have a clear title. So if you just want a rental, dude, this is a cheap rental. It'll be great for you. But let's be clear. Like, again, our job as wholesalers is not to make the situation worse for the seller or the buyer, because you will have a very short career if you're operating like this. And this is why wholesalers have a bad name, but different podcast.
Well, yeah, and it's funny. There's somebody in the Facebook that commented, "You wouldn't do your due diligence. You wouldn't put up $500,000 without doing your due diligence." Respectfully, and it's like, they're literally. I know a guy who is out there, and what he's teaching people is to buy up all of these like properties in Texas on quick claim deeds. They can't clear title, and so when they can't clear title, and I'm trying to help them solve this issue, and they're having to go back and back and back and back, whatever. And then we have lost contracts to this guy that's out here. They're teaching it because what he does is he buys it back from the student when they find out, and then he sells it to another student on a quick claim.
And listen, to say people don't do it is nonsense. And we may be being, exaggerating, like with $500,000. But I can tell you a story. A good friend of mine who knew that I was an investor, this is 6 or 8 years ago, he calls me. He's like, "Hey, David, I just bought this house. this real old historical house. I'm remodeling it. Do you want to come check it out? I'm like, yeah, man. His name was David. And this guy's like smart, like not poor, like good job as an engineer, easy 6-figure guy. And I get in there. I'm like, oh, Dave, his name's Dave Smith. I'm like, oh, Dave, this is nice. Where'd you get this deal? Oh, I just bought it at the tax sale. I'm like, oh, yeah, when? Last Thursday. And he had a crew in there tearing it apart.
Oh my God.
I like, bro, stop. You can't do this.
Where was this at?
Here in Chattanooga. Like,
And how long is your redemption period at the tax
he
sale?
bought it like a week ago, like 10 days ago. Like he had just bought it. And
Uh-oh, your camera went out.
hold on. Let me. Okay, sorry,
You getting rowdy over
yeah,
there?
we've been podcasting all day, so it's
the battery died.
A little. But so I'm like, dude, like the person that lost this in the tax sale can come grab this thing back, and all the work that you've put into it, like you're not going to get reimbursed. So, that's a thing that people don't understand. And again, buying a tax sale, not against it. I bought a bunch of them. I think they're great. But, you need to have that education and understand what it is that you're buying. So to say people don't do it, not true. Not true.
And then it's by the county, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
like you have to be like super familiar. So where we are, for example, like if we were to go to the Tarrant County sale, it might be different than another county over, and you go buy or you go buy property at a tax sale.
Yeah.
Well, you have a different experience entirely sometimes when you're looking at that. And I will never forget when I got so excited about buying stuff from tax sale, like way back when. And I was like, this is going to be amazing. We're going to kill it, blah, blah. And then I'm like, wait, I have to wait how long?
Yeah,
until
7 to 10 years, depending upon where you're at.
Yeah.
Or do a super title.
There's some counties where you don't have to wait.
And there is a strategy there, right?
Yeah.
I had a friend when I lived in Florida, and he bought a lot of tax deeds. And what he would do is he would go back to the previous seller, the guy who lost it, and say, hey, man, I'll give you $500 if you sign this quitclaim deed. Boom. And we're done. So I'm not saying there's not a strategy there.
Sure.
But if you don't, but not understanding how that works, right? Like anything, sub-2 novations,
Yeah.
You just need a little bit of education and a good coach and a good program like you guys.
Well, and I think that it is super, super, super vital, and like all wrapping this around to where, it makes you guys such a valuable asset to anybody's team.
Mm-hmm.
Is that, for us, if, we're like clearing title and knowing those things, like there's so many people, like our students, knowledgeable, new, whatever.
Sure.
And they don't understand what comes up or like what it means when something comes up at title, but they think, oh, I can do transaction coordination. And it's like, no,
I can maybe change my own oil, or I could seize the engine 50-50,
Yeah.
Why would you want to?
Yeah. And it's so crazy for me because there's people out there, and I would say, less like you see that more on like quitclaim deeds, like when you're having to solve title problems, right?
Yeah.
But there's people out there that are like, oh, but no, we're going to make this deal's now a deal in my side of it. This is now a deal because we're just going to do sub-2, or we're just going to do novations. Yeah. And it's like, how many transactions have you closed, or how many houses have you closed? Oh, well, I've never bought a house before. Yeah. I've never done a deal before, but it's fine. And it's like,
I love the optimism because I'm optimistic too. Like trust me, I'm that guy. But yeah, man, again, when you got Hannah and her team and they've done 3,000 transactions, this is what I tell people, Cassie. I'm like, close your eyes. I want you to think of the worst day you've ever had with a file or a transaction. Like, it should give you the heebie-jeebies if you've done any kind of business. Or if you're brand new, think of the thing that scares you the most.
Yeah.
That's Tuesday for us. Like,
exactly.
I promise you, like I walk by the coordinators and I'll hear them like, I'm like, oh, cool. Also, I'm trying to be helpful. I'm like, do you need any help? No, I got this. I'm like, oh, all right, I guess I'll go back to my office and scroll squirrel videos, right? Like, but this is what they do all day long. And, you to kind of circle back around, you had talked about VAs. Like, it's bad for you as a business owner to be doing your own transactions, but worse is hiring a VA. Like, that's the worst thing.
Yep.
And like, you've had probably VAs that are cold callers. Like, is it a thatch roof or a barrel?
Right.
So, they just don't understand that terminology. And not to say they're not awesome. Like, we use VAs to do a lot of marketing and things in our business, but we never would use them for transactions. And then, something that I think sets us above is all of our transaction coordinators here in Chattanooga, they're in the office,
Yep.
right? So we sort of get that kind of that hive mind where they can all, maybe I haven't dealt with this before, but let me, just yell over to Shelly. She's done it, or Claudia,
It was
or
really
Hannah.
fun. I think that when we had a girl start last year and she was working on her first foreclosure deal, and those are very time sensitive. You have to be really, really aggressive about getting it done quickly. And two of the other coordinators like stopped what they were doing and they were like, hey, let's make a list. Like, here's what you have to do, but like, this is a specific situation, so let's switch our strategy. Let's try this. So there's like that shared collective thinking that you get by having a team in-house.
Well, and I think that it goes further because, so I'll just give you guys like a couple of examples. Not getting fired by a title company.
Yeah.
We've been fired by title companies because they just don't want to deal with the transaction.
Yeah.
They don't want to deal with the, whatever. But then
our business,
I'm like, why? Because I can
Yeah.
go get this, and this from the seller, and like they just don't know any better.
Yeah.
So I say all that to say, I've dealt with title companies that don't know. Now, I know you guys are like, you open your own title company and you're in several states now. But my point being, like, we've dealt with title companies, like they don't know how to deal with these transactions. They don't know how to deal with that foreclosure. They don't know how to deal with a creative deal, much less of, like they're used to dealing with realtors or whatever,
So and in fairness too, like their title companies are like restaurants. There are lots of different types. And if I wasn't in this business and I was opening a title company outside of this, like, what business would you want? The brand new house that was built 2 years ago, that was dirt and forest before, where the title search is going to be easy, and I'm dealing with a realtor, and it's $400,000, and I'm going to make a $1,500 title policy.
Yeah,
like I don't begrudge them for not wanting our deals, but what I do tell title companies is we are the gift that keeps giving, right? Good economy, bad economy, investors keep on rolling. And
we have title companies call us asking to work with us, and we'll put them through the ringer. I want them to be able to do every single different type of transaction. I want them to know how to track down heirs. I want to know what their response time is. Can they send a mobile notary? You can't do all those things, then it's actually not going to benefit any of us.
Yeah. And that's important to us because you as our client, it's again, our obligation, to make sure that if this is a closable deal, that it gets closed. So we're not going to send it to a title company that has no experience doing novations, right? Because we're going to get a week from closing and they're going to be like, oh, my underwriter said that we can't do this. It's illegal. And we're going to have to call you and, change title companies, and maybe you lose your buyer and you lose your $50,000 and you should be pissed. You should be fucking pissed.
Yeah. Vetting a new title company takes time. It takes time, and it takes knowing what you're talking about. Not just, oh, I'm going to do a novation, and you're going to go to the title company and say, oh, I'm doing a novation. Yeah. Chances are the title company does not know what you're talking about. You have to be able to explain the paperwork to them.
There's also title companies who cannot do novation.
Sure.
They won't do them.
No. Even wholesale deals you've ever had.
I've heard no from title companies before that have come back and been like, actually, we looked into it. We sit down with our underwriter and we'll do a 2-hour call, and boom, they'll do them. The new wholesaler who's just learned what wholesaling is and calls a title company and like, I want to do this, and it's an assignment of contract, and I'm just going to and they're like, get the fuck out of here. Yeah. I don't have time to teach you how to do this stuff.
So I will say, like, there's just so many things. And I'll just give you guys an example. Not like, and I don't even do this, but like I've helped a sub-2 student, students actually get through title, and otherwise, like, they were gonna lose. Like, basically, what happened? Long story short, I should probably finally do like a whole, review on this scenario, but. They purchase a house, they remodel the house, the subject to, they borrow private money to do the remodel.
Okay.
And the seller died. His spouse, who he purchased the house with, had already died prior to. And the title company was telling them they can't close it. Their agent was sitting there telling them they can't close it. They tried to open it up with 3 different title companies. It can't be closed. And I'm like, this is a very simple thing. You know, it was just the underwriter saying
Yeah.
no.
And
And them not knowing how to talk about it.
because they have verbal diarrhea. They just call these people up and they just start saying stuff. Just relax. You're on, as long as you did it right, you're on title and you got an authorization to release information to get the loan payoff. Bing, bang, boom, we're done.
Preferably you'd have power of attorney too.
Yeah.
They had power of attorney. What the problem is because the deeds were signed prior to the seller passing away. They were not recorded until 2 days after the seller passed away. So that was a big problem to solve. And then the only person in line, airship wise, getting on board, like, it was a very simple process for the title company to ensure, but they just didn't know how to talk through it, and have been told by their agent and have been told by, multiple title companies, because then when it came up with the first title company, then their agent was like, you need to go do a quiet title action.
Oh, goodness. Like, what is that going to do? The mortgage is still going to be there. That mortgage ain't going away.
Everything was filed with the mortgage company. They'd been paying the mortgage the entire time. So it's just like this crazy thing. It's like, literally, here's a weird random question I don't know the answer to. I was like, is there such a thing as an affidavit from a notary? Because this notary did all the paperwork for 9 months for this property. I'm like, can they sign an affidavit for you?
You can get anybody to do an affidavit.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, that's a notary's job, is to make sure that the person signing is the person,
Right.
But
and they signed all the documents, because there was months of documents with this transaction, right? So I'm like,
so if nothing else, the lesson there at one is you should have had a TC probably, or at a minimum, you should have been at the right title company, because dude, if you and I had stopped every time somebody told us something was illegal, like, I'm not saying we're doing anything illegal. Like, I don't want anybody to misconstrue that.
Oh no.
Right. Like, all of our deals close at a licensed title company or an attorney.
Between what's legal and what's insurable.
Sure. So, we want to make sure that everybody's protected. But I mean, wholesaling's illegal if you talk to some people. I mean, just the ignorance in the market of what we do. I tell people kind of the way wholesaling, I know we got to wrap it up. I'm going long, but we sort of, investors, we operate behind the curtain like the Wizard of Oz, right? They know something's happening back there, but they really can't see it and they don't understand it. So to them, it's just this big spooky thing. But it's not,
Well, it is. I will say this, and I could talk about this. I nerd out about this stuff because, I've just seen it time and time and time again, where, like, there are so many things that when you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And I think that is the biggest thing with transaction coordination, right? Like, you don't know what you don't know on the solving the title issue. And that's not even transaction coordination to me, right? Like, it's almost like you guys are like a threefold situation, to where it's, trying to get the paperwork side, the communications and those coordinations. They're so incredibly vital. But understanding that title process and solving those issues when they come up is understanding title. I mean, my goodness, it's like you said, you couldn't affordably put somebody in those positions. And it is one of the most important things to make sure your deals get closed, So I think that, like I said, I don't even know how to solve every single one. And I'm having to basically study, intensively. When we run into something, people normally bring it to me and they're like, hey, how do I say this? What's this? What's that? And I'm like, it's as simple as this seller telling one of our students the other day that, hey, we're not going to pull title on this one. We're not going to have any title fees because, it's a quiet claim deed is what they said. Quiet claim deed.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, no, that's not a real thing. And I'm like, here's the deal. They're probably trying to sell it on a quick claim deed, and they don't want to pull title because
Because they know something's wrong.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
committing fraud, which was a great fun thing I got to encounter.
Yeah.
We encounter a lot of that at the winter. People trying to sell properties that aren't theirs, and
oh man, and it's become so much more just like in the past year, in my opinion. Like
Sure.
I've seen so much more of it than I've ever seen in prior years in the past year.
Yeah.
You know, and I'll say this is like another, you know, last point too, in that understanding like what changes your title companies have.
Yeah.
To deal with that. Like we saw a lot of changes with
Sure.
title, you
Yeah.
know, protection processes to avoid that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's different today. I'm telling you, it's different today than, you know, closing a deal today is different than it was 10 years ago. So if you're watching some old video of a guy from, you know, 2012 talk about pass-through funding and, you know, all this kind of stuff, like it's a lot of that's gone away. Most states won't do it anymore. There's still a few. You know, anything that looks like fraud is under deep scrutiny. And, you know, the ability to use your buyer's funds to double close for your seller. Like we can make it happen in some places, but not every place, right? Just some title companies have done away with it. The state of Tennessee has legislated against it. There's a specific statute that says you're not allowed to do it. Do some title companies do it? Sure, but if they get audited, they're going to lose their license. So I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but you know, we've got some title companies up our sleeve that will still do it. But it, you know, that's the stuff that's kind of going away. You know, they're just, it's getting a little more, you know, just challenges that you need to understand and be able to overcome.
Well, I will say this: this is not what I want to be my area of expertise.
Yeah.
I want to count.
I don't think it was going to be mine either. Yet here we are.
And go to you. That's what.
I want to hear more about that terrorist thing later.
Yeah. Well, I mean, all of that to say, I do think you are brilliant when you had this idea, but even if it wasn't the idea being the pioneer of it in and of itself, I do think you are the pioneer of the how.
That's very kind to say. And listen, I freely tell people it was definitely my idea, but you know, with you know, my VP of operations, Heather, who's amazing. I know you met her, and Hannah and our good team.
And I saw her on TV.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was like, was that you were at this game? She's like,
that's right. Yeah. I did saw that too. That was a bad day for her. Yeah.
I know. I felt so sad for her. I was like, I'm so sorry. I know that pain.
Yeah, but no, they're, you know, our team is what really makes us special. Yeah.
I understand that notion very much so. I have the best partner and the best team in the world, in my opinion. And I'm slightly biased, but I'm also not biased. So I know you guys are going to be back in a month, but
we're going to make this a monthly thing. I love it.
Tell me, what is the one thing you want to leave the people with about transaction coordination for the next 30 days?
Yeah, you know, and I hopefully RJ will agree with me. I think, and we didn't really get to talk about this, where a lot of problems come from is really on the acquisition side and rushing through acquisitions, right?
Amen, brother. That's the whole King Closer formula.
Yeah. Oh. But you know, I think people rushing through, one, not understanding maybe the scope of what the rehab is going to cost, so they offer too much and then they can't get it resold. Or when they're talking to somebody and they say, yeah, I inherited the property, and they just sort of blow right by that and don't have a good understanding or set good expectations. Oh, hey, this isn't something we can close in 30 days. Let's go ahead and put 90 days on this contract just to make sure that we have time to clear everything up. So I think a lot of problems come and stem from just acquisitions rushing through that process. And, you know, just slow it down just a little bit more and really understand your deal. You know, I think that would be the, you know, if you wanted to do one thing, one little bit of homework for the next month, and then the next thing you could do is jump on Titanium TC, and there'll be a video of me and RJ, and there's a little spot under there. You can book a call, and we'd love to talk to you about your company and how you're doing transactions and see if maybe we'd be a good fit for you.
I can't imagine anybody would not be a good fit for you. It would just probably be they just don't know better yet. But yeah, I definitely think that I will support that statement 100-fold. I mean, it is the way that we teach things. You know, people often, you know, think they don't have to learn a comp and underwrite in order to acquire deals. They're like, but I got it at a discount from the Zestimate. So, and I'm like, you don't even understand what a closing cost is. You don't even understand, you know, things like that. And it's just like, it's so crazy to me. And, you know, a lot of people, a lot of our peers, and I'm sure you can relate to this. They think, you know, well, RJ and Cassie, you took the long road, you know, when it came to us educating people. And it's because like, I don't curse often on our lives, but it's because we refuse to half-ass it, right?
Yeah.
So for me, it's like, yeah, you're absolutely right. Your job becomes easier, and your job should become easier at Easy REI because you did such a great job on acquisitions.
Right.
Now, RJ does always, or he used to, I haven't heard him say this in a really long time. He's like, acquisitions is the easiest. And I'm like, no, dispositions is the easiest.
I'm with you. I agree.
Like acquisitions and TCs, those points, if you were to cut it in 3.
Yeah, I think it's a third of the business, 100%.
It is. I completely agree. And what's really funny about it is like he used to give me like a really hard time like back in the day because he'd be like, what were you so busy with? I'm like, bro, I am the TC for our entire company. Like, are you insane? Like back in like the original 50-50-50, and he was gonna acquire and dispo both. Yeah. And I'm like sitting there, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do dispo. Okay, I'm doing all this TC work. And he's like, and I'm like, bro, I'm doing this for like 60 ongoing deals. Yeah, right now. Dude. Like, are you insane? I'm one human.
You're juggling sticks of dynamite. Hey, I'm gonna kick Hannah out because she's got to go onboard a new client. So
well, we're gonna wrap up.
She'll be back. Yeah, she's got to go do a thing.
Later. Thank you.
But she'll be back next month.
Thank you, Hannah. We'll see you next month, if not sooner.
Back there.
So cool.
But yeah, it's absolutely insane, and it does. It all starts on knowing your stuff on acquisitions or having somebody. To me, you know, we always have talked about how your title person is such a vital component to your business, that relationship.
Yeah.
But you really have created something very special because that transaction coordination piece. And like I said, to me, y'all are closing coordinators, and, you know, you have that title aspect, even if you aren't insuring the title, that knowledge there. You know,
title companies love working with us because what happens is, you know, when let me say when I was first starting out, because I won't say typical wholesaler, but, you know, I would send the contract and then they would send me an email like, hey, is this guy married? I go, I don't know. I don't know. Let me go find out. Right. So it's, you know, it's all those, you know, million questions that come back and forth. So, you know, when we present your file to the title company, like I tell people, it's like the Fabergé egg. It goes literally like with a nice bow around it. Like all the information is there, your buyer, your seller, everything is nice and neat. So maybe they have 1 or 2 questions, but not 40. You know what I mean?
Right.
So they like working with us because they can process those files much quicker, right? Because again, everything is compressing time. And, you know, that's very intentional. We don't want to spend a bunch of, you know, hours back and forth, like, oh, let me go call the guy and see if he's married, right? No, he's not married. Great. So I tell the title company, oh, not married. And then they're like, okay, well, is he like divorced or widowed? Oh, shit. Back I go. Let me call him again. Are you divorced or widowed? Yeah, I'm divorced. Great. Here, yeah, he's divorced. Now I need the divorce decree. Oh God. You know.
Yeah, well, and it's so much more than that. It's like even when you have like that seller info sheet and you send it out, like if you're not doing what you do, like which isn't the best use of your time.
Yeah, it's not.
Reiterating that point, like how often I could. Look, I've been doing this for a minute, right? And I can't even tell you how many of those I've sent to sellers. And I'm like, my team did not get those filled out. My team did not get those filled out. You know what I'm
we
saying?
have it on a DocuSign. We'll do it over the phone with them. Sometimes we get older people who are like, just mail it to me, honey, and I'll fill it out. I'm amazed every time they come back. Just amazed when they come back in the mail. But yeah, I mean, you just, you know, for us, we just have to be able to adapt to what the seller is, right? And so our team understands that some people are going to want it to be done that way. Like, that's just how it is. And, our job is to get through it. And, whatever that means, is to get this deal over the finish line. That's our job.
It's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing, and to that point is it getting to the finish line. That's the only way you make money, So if you skip out or you don't understand the depth of that third portion of your closing a transaction, you're going to close so many less deals, and you're gonna for multiple reasons. It's not just the deals you contract; it's the deals you could be contracting without doing all of that work. So,
and that's why we say closing 30% more deals, because one, half of those deals that die, we think we can save them, and two, you're going to now have 30% of your time to go back and contract more deals or do more follow up or train your team or do that type of stuff. So and we've seen it over and over. We have people that come in at a a kind of a basic level, and their companies start growing and growing and growing, and that's something that we take a lot of pride in. Not that, like, I didn't contract the deal for you, but I've given you the the comfort knowing that your deal is probably going to close. And I've given you that time to go back and spend on the parts of your business that you love doing, right? Because we should all be doing stuff that we love, not the stuff that, like me, I thought I had to do because I was a hustler and an entrepreneur, and I got to do it all.
I'm telling you, I love that I know it, but I love not doing it.
Oh, I'm telling you,
I love that I know it, because had I not gone through that, like, it was such an important, like, you didn't exist back then anyway. Well, in my world anyway, your company didn't exist yet, this one. But I love that I know it, because it was such an important part of our journey. And I will say this, in that, I don't often do this, and I have the best business partner in the whole world, but we're transparent around here. There was a point in time in our business when I used to tell him, like, you have no idea how much you undervalue what I do. He never undervalued me, but he did undervalue what I do. Had I not gotten my real estate license, I probably wouldn't have eventually. I can't. That is what triggered me to naturally have the desire to want to understand as much of that as I could, because I naturally want to avoid a problem before it occurs. Like, I mean, who wouldn't? So that kind of triggered me into that, and I naturally ended up being the person that handled all of it. But I say this all of the time, and I think it was actually a question on Pardon the Disruption last week, in that they asked, what is the most undervalued, portion, role in our industry? And I know somebody had answered, like, transaction coordination. And I was like, amen, because I said it for forever. Forever. I think 30% more deals is conservative. If I'm being honest, for most businesses, I think that's conservative.
What happens is, again, if you don't know what you don't know, you're going to be like me, and you're going to take, Dr. Knows, oh, this can't close. And you're like, oh, darn. Well, that's $10,000 down the tubes. The next worst thing is hiring in somebody who, maybe doesn't know a lot about transactions, or was a realtor or something like that. And you give them a little bit of training, the best that you can, and then you put that person in place. And when that person comes back to you, is like, geez, can't close this thing. Like, you trust them because you think they're a transaction coordinator, but really they don't know any more really than you do. Right. So now you have this trust that, oh, well, this really couldn't be closed. It's just not a closable deal.
Yeah.
And it just kind of snowballs like that. So,
well, there's not closable deals out there too. And, like, you're saving time for people by discovering that where they don't know how to really discover it. Right. There's so many different levels of, like, how deals are lost, and sometimes they can be solved and sometimes they can't. And you have to ask 50 questions to figure out they can, instead of 2.
And there are times where, it's not a quick fix, right? There are times where we come back to our client and go, okay, here's the deal. You do need a super quiet title. We're happy to explain that to the client. We can connect them with a local attorney. Here's what I would suggest you do. Go ahead and put your seller on a 6-month extension, get your buyer on a 6-month extension. Like, the deal can get done. It just can't get done today. right? But
Right.
here are the steps, like here's the steps to go ahead and solve it. And like, dude, we're in it till the end, right? Like we're gonna hang with this thing until it closes.
And a last point on that note, I don't want to be keeping track of that. I don't want my guys to I say guys because all my team is guys that on the sales floor anyway. I don't want my guys dealing with that, and it's like for 6 months and walking a seller through every little thing. And, they don't know how to ask what the attorney is saying or what so it's just, it can get very convoluted. Yeah.
Yeah. We'll just touch base and say, hey, Mrs. Smith,
or you can log in your portal.
Yeah. We'll tell you. It's funny when I show people the portal. Maybe next time we can do that. I look at all the notes and I'm like, bro, somebody's got to do all this work. It's either me or you. But
I don't want it to be me.
This is the work that's required to get these deals over the finish line. And the notes are pages, where call the seller, call the title company, did the email, did all the things. And, what happens is, like, I was doing all of those things. But because it was 5 minutes here, 10 minutes here, 20 minutes there, and I didn't realize it, right? How much time it was taking up.
Oh, Lord. Yeah.
And that is the thing we hear most often from our clients after 30, 60 days. Holy smokes, David, I had no idea how much of my life this was consuming. And I just thought I had to do it. I didn't know there was another answer.
Yeah. I mean, I will go, like, I've seen the craziest things. Indian burial grounds on the property, rights of access. And like, there's so many things for us to go through and hone in on our, monthly. I really appreciate you guys hopping on here and giving value to our community because, like I said, I really geek out over.
I know I could do this for 5 hours. So
I know, right?
I'm like, was going to hang with us for 5 hours, but
RJ knows too. He's like, okay, here's the deal. You're going to need to be careful because I know you and David will both get on there. You're going to want to talk and you connect. And I'm like, okay, yeah, we'll save some stuff for the future months. But I will say this, guys. So make sure 3 things happen for me. Okay. Make sure you guys give David some love, give Hannah some love, give Easy REI Closing some love in our group. They're going to provide, they've provided already. They're going to continue to provide so much value to you guys about transaction coordination process. And what this means in talking to your sellers, what this means in talking to your buyers, understanding that language in and of itself and this was one of the points that I was making, in an understanding that even when you are utilizing them as a company, the language changes when you know this on an expert level and how you solve those problems with a seller or buyer. You get sellers that will start to go, I'm feeling like this is kind of weird and sketch because, you don't know how to utilize the language as a professional or as an expert. They start to lack confidence in you if you aren't an expert in this, right? Or if you're not communicating as often.
We'll make you look good.
Yeah. And so for me, that was always one of the things that I honed in on. So the knowledge that you have, and you're going to continue to impart on this, it's going to continue to help you guys talk to your sellers and give them those, that confidence that, you are going to get that deal across the finish line. So help you God. As long as it can be closed, it will be closed, right?
Yep, absolutely.
And then 2, I think it's something that's really important that you guys, make sure you're engaging in the group. And you're telling David, you're telling me, you're telling RJ, because it probably won't always be me, even though I want to, steal all these calls myself because I'm way nerdier about it than RJ is. I'm sure he'll want to be like, no, I want to go live with David this month.
We can go in, and maybe we'll do one time where people can just come on and just ask like, bring me your tough deals. I'll just tell you how we would solve it. That's okay. I just love it. Give value.
That value is undeniable. Like, that's insane, David. So we appreciate you so much. But guys, show him love. Get in there, talk about your title stuff, talk about your TC stuff, talk about, ask the questions. That's what the group is there for. And the fact that you can get access to this information for free is insane. I wish to God I had that
Yeah,
when we
I didn't have
started.
that. I had none of that.
Please,
This
we
didn't
were
exist when I started investing. Just to put it into perspective, I'm the old guy in the rocking chair on the porch, right? But none of this was around.
no, I mean, we started 9 years ago and it wasn't around. Thank
Yeah.
God I have RJ. I probably would have been like, I'm tapping out. I'm tapping out. And then last but not least, we are giving away. I don't know if you know this, David. I'm pretty sure you do.
I saw your post. Yeah, I'm in the group.
We are giving away the comp underwriting because this is relevant to this specific call. And we're having a giveaway for the most engagement on these calls because, as David said, and it's so funny that you brought it up because this is kind of the thought behind it, right? Your job, all the problems start with acquisitions if you don't do it right. And comping and underwriting is another thing that I'm super passionate about. I'm super nerdy about. Like, your deal's not going to go across the finish line if you don't know how to comp and underwrite it appropriately or understand where end buyers buy. So, and then leave us just comments on what you guys are wanting to see from these calls in the future because it helps us so much in providing value to you and answering your questions. Sometimes, those of us have been doing this for 9+ years, however many, 20 years, it's not that we forget what it was like in your shoes, but, sometimes that may not be something that occurs to us that you want an answer for today. So I want to see what you guys want to hear, what you want us to cover, because there's such a plethora of things. And, we're here to serve. That's why we're doing this. And if you don't comment, we're going to assume we served you well.
Yeah. I love questions. I texted RJ yesterday and like, hey, what do you want this to be? I would much rather come on here and do questions and answers all day than do some slideshow presentation. So I love this.
Yeah, I love this too. It's super funny. I used to be more of that slide gal. Yeah. And RJ broke me of that. Now I'm like the opposite. I'm like him, where I'm like, let's freestyle,
right?
Yeah, like he's a freestyling fool, and he's so good at it. I'm like, I'm not as good as him on freestyle.
No, you did great.
But I do all right now.
You did all right.
So Robert says, have him on speed dial during closers formula. You're going to use them this year to put them to work. So we do have the closers formula coming in, and we will make sure you can get connected with them, Robert. And you are going to love, Robert, you are going to love easy REI closings. Let me tell you, like, I don't want you learning all the stuff David knows. Our job is to fast forward the process, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll take a couple of quick questions before we hop off. If you got a minute, David.
Yeah, absolutely.
When you have the seller on the agreement and say you found a buyer, do you send them the agreement or do you wait for the title company? You don't wait for the title company to do any of that.
Lock it up. Get the signatures on the paper.
Yeah. Lock it up. They'll deal with all the title people. We have the most valuable people in the game. That's right. Our homies are the best. Legit. Our homies are the best. We're super.
Let me go back to Robert there for 1 second because yes, you 100% lock it down. Here's one thing though, in your acquisitions where you're asking good questions, and if your seller says, "Hey, yeah, I inherited the property, but everybody is on board to sign. Everybody's good," right? The reason you want to know that is because I can tell my dispo, and they can kind of clutch and break on what the expectation is that they're setting for the buyer, right? So if I assume that it has clear title, my dispo's like, yeah, man, we can get this done and we'll get it closed in 10 days and we'll be good, right? But if you understand that there could be something that delays title, we want to say to our dispo guy, hey, great, definitely sell this, lock it up, but let's put 30 days on the contract so that everybody has good expectations, right? So again, it does come back to, to acquisitions or, for us, that's the type of stuff that we report to our clients. Hey, we just noticed there's this issue. We're going to have to get this, and this, so we're good. We can still close, but just so this is a realistic expectation of when you can close. Cause you don't want to be telling your cash buyer your cash buyer may be pressing you to close in 5 days. And, it may need more time, but all that is just good communication with your TC. And if you tell us it's got to happen, we'll certainly do everything we can to make that work.
Well, and to Eduardo's point, like, I almost very rarely do we not have a buyer in place before we have a title.
Yeah.
Or we have title back.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, always lock it up. Always lock it up, buddy.
Lock it up.
You know, sometimes you have to return earnest money deposits and say you're
No,
sorry.
no, that
Handling
happens.
that, you know, in the right way, your buyers
Mhm.
will keep coming back. They respect you for good communications on that
Right.
point, and that is a part of what y'all
Yeah.
do over there, you know, where it's like you're communicating to that buyer through a title issue. Psh, that's
Yeah.
valuable time.
Right. If I come back to Cassie and say, "Hey, Cassie, I know you want to buy this, but listen, I promised you clear title, and I don't think I can't do it. There's some issue that it's going to take 6 months. I can return your EMD, or we can put an extension on here. Like, I'm going to give you a couple of options of how we can do this. But
Yeah.
that's a whole lot better than the other ways of handling it. You always have that kind of servants kind of mindset with your buyers and sellers.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times, like what we've done in those scenarios when our buyers stay on board and like
Yeah.
is we'll return their EMD, and then like when we sign the extension, say, you know, when clear title is back, that's when you'll deposit your EMD, and then you have this long to close.
Mhm.
Because, you know, sometimes if it is like a 6-month ordeal, I mean, what if the market changed? Like there was a lot of years where that wasn't the case, and as we've known in the 2020s, that's definitely more the case nowadays, where that could happen, you know. So anyways, David, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you so much for being you and creating this beast that you've created, and giving so much value to our community and being homies.
Love it. No, I'm always honored to be on your guys' channel. It's because I was a super fan for a long time. I told you the first time I saw y'all walking through the event in San Antonio, I'm like, oh, there's RJ.
Thank you.
Made me nervous. So no, I'm always fascinated that somebody wants to have me on to come talk about my silliness. So
oh, I remember. So the first time we met, like just as fun fact, I was like, that's Steven. And RJ, he was like, yeah. And I was like, I talked to him. You were talking to him. And it dawned on me because somebody else was talking to me, and he was like, hey, let's go. I was like, we got to catch him. Like when we got talk to him too. You don't get to just talk to him. It was so funny. But yeah, it is. It was so funny. Is RJ did a live with Benson from
Privy
from a prop stream earlier this week. And he says, you don't know until people start telling you. He was like, I don't know if you guys know this, but you guys like pioneered what? And I'm like, people tell us that kind of stuff all of the time, like the nationwide virtual wholesaling. Like we didn't make the phrase up, but I feel like our model and how we do it
100%.
is, we definitely do realize we were doing revolutionary things compared to other people. We just didn't know better. We're just doing and building and solving problem and making pivots and doing and building problem solving, and that's how this thing was born. And like many things in our businesses. So it's crazy because it is a small world and there's so many amazing people out there, and we are very fortunate to be very good friends, associates, and clients of so many of those people. So I can't. Yeah. I appreciate you guys so much, and we will keep it tuned and have all kinds of great ideas to come up with to talk about next month.
Sounds good. I'm looking forward to it. I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, David. Talk soon.
Bye.